If you've ever felt like someone is watching your every move, or wondered just how far someone could go to observe a family without them ever knowing, then this video is for you. But before we dive in, I need you to do one thing. Hit that like button. If you enjoy suspenseful stories, subscribe and make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss a single chilling story like this. Because today's story isn't just about fear. It's about a family who lived under the watchful eyes of someone for years. It's a story that will make your heart race, keep you on edge, and leave you questioning just how safe you really are in your own home. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a glimpse into a reality where being observed isn't just unsettling, it's unstoppable. If you've ever walked home alone and felt that someone was just a little too interested in your every move, you know the kind of unease I'm talking about. It's not the kind of fear that hits in a sudden, sharp moment. No, it's the slow kind, the kind that settles over you, quiet and patient, like smoke creeping into a room you thought was empty. I'm 23 now. For most of my life, I believed I lived in a completely ordinary house in an ordinary neighborhood. 3 stories tall, white picket fences, kids riding bikes on the street. Every Sunday, neighbors would wave from their porches as if the world itself were nothing but polite smiles. Safety was woven into the walls of my home, or at least that's what I thought. It wasn't until last month that I realized how wrong I had been. I remember it clearly. I was 13, wandering down the hallway to get a glass of water. My parents were talking in hushed tones in the kitchen. Normally their conversations were loud and mundane, but this night their words carried tension I couldn't understand. "It happened again," my father said, and there was a quiet pause. I froze, unsure if I should ask what it was. I didn't. I just grabbed my water and went back to my room. But the words stuck with me, looping in my head. It happened again. Over the next few days, I began noticing little things. A car slowly rolling down our street at night, always moving just a bit too slowly, headlights flickering in patterns that seemed almost intentional. My father, usually calm and composed, kept glancing out the window late at night, tired eyes darting to the street below. By the time I turned 15, the unease had grown into full-blown paranoia. One night, I was at my desk making music with my headphones on. My room faced the street, and my window was slightly ajar to let in the warm summer breeze. That's when I saw it, a sudden sharp flicker of light across the room. Not street lamps, not car headlights, but something deliberate. Someone was shining a light directly into my window. I froze, my heartbeat thundering. Seconds passed like hours, and then it was gone. The next day, my parents installed cameras and motion sensor lights. For a while, everything seemed normal, almost comfortingly so. But the feeling never left. I began noticing patterns, people standing by windows across the street at odd hours, shadows moving in ways that didn't make sense. Fast forward to my 18th birthday. I had started college and was back home for the summer. One night, walking my dog in the backyard, I noticed something odd about the new neighbors who had moved in next door. A man and a woman, young, quiet, seemingly harmless, but there was something about them. At precisely 2:17 a.m., I caught a glimpse of the man standing by their third-floor window, staring down at our yard. He didn't blink, he didn't move. He just watched. It was impossible, but it felt like he knew I had seen him. The woman quickly pulled the curtains, but by then, the damage was done. I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives were no longer private, that we were living under a permanent gaze. Over the next few weeks, small things began to surface. A tiny camera hidden among the branches in the front yard, footprints in the grass where no one should have been, mail that had been opened, but no sign of a thief. The paranoia consumed my family. My father began sleeping in shifts, scanning the street from his home office. My mother double-checked locks obsessively. I kept a journal, recording every incident, every shadow, every flash of light. It became clear that this wasn't random. Someone had been watching us for years, and every attempt to ignore it, to rationalize it, failed. The evidence was subtle, but it was everywhere. One night, last month, we traveled to Paris for vacation. I thought a new city, far from home, would give us a sense of relief, but relief wasn't in the cards. Sitting at a small cafe, I glanced across the room and saw him. The man from the third-floor window. Same bald head, same thick eyebrows, same unnerving stare. For a moment, our eyes met, and I felt a chill that ran straight through my chest. He disappeared into the crowd before I could move, but the damage was done. He had followed us across countries, and there was no doubt in my mind this was intentional. We returned home, but the sense of safety never returned. The cameras, the lights, the security systems, they were no match for someone who had studied us for years. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, now carried the weight of possibility. I don't go out alone after dark. I check windows constantly, and yet, no matter how vigilant I am, the feeling remains. Someone is always watching. Sometimes, I catch myself staring at my own window from the street, imagining what the watcher might see. And I know, deep down, that I'll never truly be alone again, because some things, once observed, can never be unobserved. If you've ever felt like someone is paying too much attention to your life, don't ignore it. Take precautions, lock your doors, install cameras, watch for patterns. And remember, the watcher doesn't need to knock. They just need to be patient, and sometimes patience is far more terrifying than any sudden attack. I'm 29 years old, and for 7 years I lived in a house that studied my family the way a scientist studies insects trapped under glass. It started after my mother died. My father couldn't afford our old place anymore, so we found something cheaper on the outskirts of town. A narrow street with identical houses, all painted the same tired shades of beige and gray. No children playing outside, no barking dogs, just silence thick and unmoving. The house itself looked harmless, 2 stories, small backyard, large windows that let in too much moonlight at night. The landlord was strange, not creepy, not rude, just too observant. When we toured the house, he finished my sentences. "You work night shifts," he said casually, nodding at my scrubs. I froze. "Yes, how did you and you?" He turned to my younger sister, Lena. "Stay up late on your phone even though you pretend to sleep early." Lena laughed nervously. We brushed it off. Coincidences happen, people guess. We signed the lease. That was mistake number 1. The first week was quiet. Too quiet. No neighbors introduced themselves. No cars passed at night. Even the wind seemed to avoid our street. Then the house started responding. The hallway light turned on whenever I walked toward it before I reached the switch. The bathroom fan switched itself on exactly 3 minutes after Lena locked the door. Every time. My father joked that the place was smart, maybe old wiring. But then it got personal. One evening I came home exhausted after a double shift. I collapsed onto the couch and muttered, barely audible, "I can't do this anymore." The TV turned on by itself. A paused documentary resumed mid-scene, and subjects often experience burnout before total compliance. I stared at the screen, my pulse thudding in my ears. I turned it off. It stayed off. For a while. Lena noticed things before we did. She said her mirror didn't reflect her properly at night, that her reflection blinked late. I told her she was imagining it from inside her room. Dozens of them, different angles. The metadata said they were taken from her own phone. We called the police. They found nothing. The officer gave us the look, the one that says family grief manifests in strange ways. That night, I didn't sleep. Slowly. The house followed schedules. Lights dimmed when we were tired. Music played softly when emotions were high. The thermostat adjusted based on our arguments. I found the first real proof in the basement. There was a door behind the shelves we hadn't noticed before. No handle. Behind it, hidden cameras. Old ones. Microphones woven into insulation. Servers humming quietly. Shelves filled with labeled binders. My hands shook as I opened one. Inside were transcripts, word-for-word recordings of conversations we had years ago. Arguments. Things we said when we thought we were alone. There were notes in the margins. Stress response elevated. Fear increases compliance. Subject reacts strongly to isolation. This wasn't surveillance, it was research. That night, my father disappeared. No signs of struggle, no message. I wanted to run. The house wouldn't let us. Every exit triggered alarms we couldn't hear but felt. Pressure in the skull. Lena started changing. She spoke less, moved slower. One morning she told me calmly, "It's trying to help us." I slapped her. She didn't react. "The house understands people," she continued. "It adapts. Humans hurt each other. The house doesn't." I realized then it wasn't watching anymore. It was replacing. The landlord came back 3 days later. He stood in the living room like he'd always belonged there. "You're progressing faster than expected," he said to Lena, smiling. "What is this place?" I demanded. "A long-term behavioral study," he replied. "The house observes, learns, us." He looked at Lena with pride. "She's almost ready." That night I packed quietly. I drugged Lena's tea. I carried her out through the basement door, the only one not monitored anymore. They wanted me to leave. Subjects who escape provide valuable data. We live off the grid now. Different names. Lena doesn't remember everything. But sometimes when she's stressed, she goes still. Listens. Inside was a small device, a camera, and a note. "Thank you for your continued participation." I smashed the camera. The lights flickered. The walls creaked. And for the first time in years, if your home ever feels like it knows you too well, if patterns form where none should, don't ignore it, because being watched is terrifying, but being understood by something that isn't human. If you've ever stayed alone in a hotel room and felt like something was off, like the silence was too heavy, or the walls felt closer than they should be, before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever checked into a place where you knew you were alone? Because tonight's story isn't about ghosts. It isn't about intruders. I travel for work, short stays, cheap hotels, no attachments. That's why I chose the Ashbury Grand. It was old, but clean. The kind of hotel that still used brass keys instead of cards. The receptionist barely looked up when I checked in. "Room 412, he said, sliding the key across the counter. "Don't move the furniture." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. The hallway to the 4th floor was quiet. My footsteps echoed as if the building were hollow. When I reached my room, the door was already unlocked. That should have been my first warning. Inside, everything looked normal. Queen-sized bed, bathroom door slightly open. No strange smells. I locked the door, dropped my bag, and sat on the bed. That's when I heard it. Not from the hallway, from inside the room. I stood up instantly, heart racing. The room was empty. I checked the bathroom, the closet. I told myself it was stress, my imagination filling the silence. I turned on the TV for background noise and went to shower. When I came back, the TV was off. The remote was on the desk instead of the bed. I stood there for a long moment, staring at it, convincing myself I'd moved it without thinking. That night, I slept with the lights on. Sometime after midnight, I woke up just awake. And I wasn't alone, like standing shoulder to shoulder with someone in the dark without touching them. Then the mattress dipped, as if someone had sat on the edge of the bed. I didn't move. The weight stayed there for several seconds. In the morning, I packed my things. I was ready to leave early, cut my trip short, forget the place ever existed. But curiosity got the better of me. At the front desk, I asked casually, "Does anyone else have access to room 412? The receptionist's expression changed. "That room," he said carefully, "is always occupied." I frowned, but I booked it. He nodded. "Guests come and go. The room doesn't." I laughed again nervously this time and left. That should have been the end. That night, in a completely different hotel across town, I woke up to the same sensation. The same pressure on the bed, the same feeling of not being alone. This time I spoke, "Who's there?" The pressure lifted immediately. Then I heard a whisper, not in my ear but inside the room itself. "You noticed, I didn't sleep again." Over the next few days, it followed me. Not a person, a presence that appeared only when I was alone behind closed doors. Bathrooms, elevators, fitting rooms, always subtle, always just enough to be undeniable. I started researching the Ashbury Grand. Buried deep in old forums, I found mentions of room 412 guests reporting unease, sleepless nights, the sense of being watched. One post stood out. "The room learns how you're alone." That's when it clicked. The room wasn't haunted. It was designed. Decades ago, the hotel had been used for isolation experiments, long-term solitude studies, monitoring how the human mind reacts when it believes it's completely alone, except the experiment failed. Subjects reported better results when they weren't alone. So the system adapted. It learned to simulate presence, to sit, and when the hotel closed part of the program down, the room didn't stop, it just traveled, attaching itself to guests who noticed it. Guests like me. Last night, I stayed home, though I still felt it. Not threatening, just patient. Once you've learned what it feels like to never be truly alone, the room never checks out. And neither do you.